I think we're ready. Why don't you go ahead and start with the intros?
All right, people. Hey, thank you guys all for joining us for the Machine Metrics webinar series. The title says it all. We're introducing new features, new functionality on the daily. It's part of the beauty of SaaS technology. What you're buying is a continued evolution of a product. And today, you're going to see some really great stuff, specifically the introduction of manual station tracking utilizing machine metrics. I am joined here by my brilliant, great looking co-host, Rutherford Wilson. Rutherford, thanks for joining us today.
Wonderful. Thank you for such a great introduction. And everyone out there, thank you for joining us to introduce manual stations. Manual stations, I mean, let's just go ahead and jump into it. But manual stations is sort of the completion of a few things that we've been working on for a while. And so just to kind of, since it is a completion of a few things, and actually, did I say completion? It's part of a journey. It's an evolution of a few things that we've been working on for quite some time. And that thing that we've been working on for quite some time is AI powered intelligence. And just to kind of recap of where manual stations sort of fits into this ecosystem of functionality, let's kind of talk about what we've been doing for the last year. Obviously, when you think about today's manufacturers, we've often talked about how they're disconnected, and really just to think about what the problem domain is, very simply, is many customers will have a planning system or a work order management system, basically their ERP. And the ERP at the end of the day is going to define this is the plan for getting production through our shop. But we all know, at least the people on this call should all know, that at the end of that plan, as soon as you make that plan and it goes to the shop floor, reality happens. And sometimes reality disrupts those plans. Machines break down, setups take too long, employees call out. Material. We were working with the customer. I won't name them because they might actually be on this call. But one of their biggest problems is their suppliers will call and the materials are coming a week later than they expected to. So they've got to replan automatically. And then there's just all this tribal knowledge that we capture and that your people know about, but it's not recorded anywhere. It's not connected to your data. And we call that the execution gap. And that's a big problem. And so our goal that we've been working on is how can we build functionality to close that execution gap? I mean, Graham, you've been talking about this. You wrote a nice white paper about this. So come on, join me.
I
Talk about
did, and I threw a little chat into the chat section. And just so you guys know, there are two ways you can interact with us during this webinar. One is through the chat. It's open. Talk to us. We're there. Talk to each other. Talk amongst yourselves. Threw a little chat in there. It says, how many of you would say that your plan always goes to plan? And let's be honest. Let's be honest, right? Feel free to respond with your best quip. But the truth is, right, the plan it almost never goes to plan, right? And we, it's the biggest problem that exists in manufacturing. Reality just, sets in, right?
it.
And we're fighting fires, right? And I think, one of the biggest challenges that our customers experience, specifically in machining space, right, is that, it's not always the machines only tell a part of the story, right? Understanding what is happening, right? Why it's so important to have to solve this execution gap. You say, well, hey, we've only run our machines, 40% of the day. Maybe that's good. Maybe you only had 40% of your day's worth of work, right? But without having more context, right? There's also like a knowledge gap that exists for you to take action on, right? And that's something that we understand that our customers, regardless of their size, need to fill. And so, and we're getting lots of questions already coming in. Thank you all for everyone's telling the host is disabled chat. That's like the worst question. I'll so my apologies. I'll find a way to fix that in the meantime. Let me see if I can. Okay, hold on. Give me a test there. Can anyone chat?
Testing, testing, one, two, three.
Test. Woo!
That's we
There we
got chat.
go. Look at that. We've really solved this.
All right.
Already
See,
solving problems as a group.
people working together. Isn't that great?
Hey, Steve.
All right. So, So this is the execution gap, and it was it the someone says about 70% of the time you get to you achieve what you plan to achieve, but that's really the problem. And so we've been on this journey to try and solve that. Okay, now as many you guys know that we can connect to almost any machine. We have our virtual edge that a lot of you guys are using, which is super exciting for me. The virtual edge is a really nice way to connect. We also have our physical edges, and we can connect to any type of machine and translate all that data into a normalized structure to make it easy to report on that. So that's one thing that we've been always been doing for quite some time, connecting to any machine. We've been combining that for a lot of our customers with being able to integrate with any system, and specifically ERP systems. We have a much stronger number of customers that are fully integrated with our ERP systems or with their ERP systems through our ERP connectors. We have a JobBoss Classic connector that we recently released, JobBoss Squared, Epicor Classic, Kinetic, which starts at version 10.2 or some version of that. And so we have all these connectors that are just ready to go to bring your data in. And so with that information, we have the plan from the ERP, we have what's really happening with your machines that's connected together. And together, we solve that problem of kind of doing the basic MES friction to basically take this information, and we have, our core four integrated features that we focus on. We have intelligence about your schedule, identifying when things are going well, based on actual real-time data coming off the machine, and then marrying that information to what the work is that you're working on.
Now,
Um,
Rutherford, allow me to
sure.
add some color commentary to this
Come
statement.
in.
Uh, Buyer beware of terms like universal connector. I'll tell you why. Because anyone that's tried to connect to a machine or an ERP has learned that it's really freaking hard. And not all connections are made equal. Just getting data from an ERP is not necessarily going to solve the execution gap, right? It might help you on the factory floor solve some key areas of challenge, right? Like, hey, what's my standard cycle time, or marrying like a work order to track the status of that work order, right? And I think that that can be very useful when it comes to like actually understanding what is going on the factory floor. But as many of us know, right, the problem is that we still then at the end of the day go home to our ERP system. And that ERP system is still ripe with misinformation, right? And so not only do you need to be able to get the data from the ERP and validate that with real-time data from the factory floor, right? Call that the machines and what we're going to be presenting to you today.
Yeah.
But the end goal is to make your ERP system smarter also, right?
Mhm.
And without that, the execution gap still exists, right? Which is, well, then you're just going to execute it wrong the next time, right? And so our connectors, right? Not only and to build these connectors, we've gone extremely deep to understand these ERP systems, right? Epicor, Infor, all the different Infors, all the different Epicors, right? Pro Shop, Global Shop. I've got like a list of them on my wall. Job Boss versions, MSD 365. I could go on and on. The gist is though that being able to pull that data allows us to track the status of all these work orders and operations and use our real-time analytics to make you smarter, right? On the daily, right? Help you execute faster. But the key is keeping your other factory systems in sync with what's happening, right? And so Machine
Correct.
Metrics bidirectional ERP integrations allows you to have a single place where you can manage work and then sync that back into your ERP environment so both systems are in line with one another. And that is really where the execution gap gets starts getting solved much better for our customers.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
No, and that's a great point. And there's some features about that bidirectional that we're going to be building, later this year and into next year that really, solves jobs that you're already doing and make them happen a lot faster. Because at the end of the day, you want to you're seeking ways to make your productivity more on your factory floor more efficient. That includes jobs that are help your value stream for building parts, as well as all these other jobs that people are doing to make sure they understand what's happening. So those are all really important. I see a question came in from Tim. You want to field that question for me, Graham?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, what if the ERP department wants to vet? You're right. Like human in the loop is critical, right? You don't necessarily
Critical.
you don't want just your MES just updating everything in real time. And here's a great example there, Tim. Like, for example, say, you run a job, right? And your cycle time, right, shows that, well, the standard, we were way off on what we expected from our standard cycle time. Well, you know, is it possible that the feed override was at 50% during that production run, right? Maybe the standard cycle time is actually correct, right? So being able to have real time and historical analytics to justify those changes is critical. Having those data items allows tools, AI tools, for example, like some of the ones that we have, right, to be able to make actual recommendations to our users, right? And using, anomalies, right, as the rule is a big mistake, right? But the goal again, Tim, is not just to necessarily push the human out of the loop, but it's to empower the ERP department, for example, to make those changes with more educated analytical decisions.
Exactly right. And that's kind of why, in order to get to this journey, we focused on um, really centering on a handful of different use cases. These use cases that, really affect, most of our customers, and that's obviously downtime tracking, something we've had in our product for quite some time, the OEE and production analytics. And earlier this year, our journey was to include factory scheduling information, or factory dispatching is probably more of an accurate representation of what we built. And then obviously job tracking, and having that information be sent back to your ERP. And that's really, we've done that with the connected machines that we provided. And in this webinar, we're going to show you how we do that with manual stations. And when we say manual stations, we sort of talk about why we want to focus on manual stations and why they become a huge part of it. And when you think about your factory floor, and maybe this is a question for everyone on the call, so use the chat, since we solved the chat execution gap here, is while connected machines, your CNC machines, your automated machines, they may take up a huge chunk of the actual work that needs to get done to produce parts. But you have deburring, you have assembly, you have all these different steps that happen outside of that production, that part of the production process, that is equally important. And so, according to some analysts, 72% of factory tasks are carried out by humans, not these connected machines. And they remain a data blind spot in terms of how they get done, how efficiently they're running. Are we tracking them in a schedule? Are we tracking if you're doing an assembly assembly at a station? Are you going to be able to track the cycle time for those assemblies? And so those are important areas where these tasks are currently not being tracked in any kind of system. And if you've been a machine metric customer, it's been difficult for you to track that with our product. And
Yeah.
so,
And let me add one quick note there too. One of the other challenges that we've seen in the market, and because I know a lot of the attendees here, because we've talked about this many times, it's like one of the biggest pain in the ass is when you need two different systems to track these things, right? Like many of our customers will use machine metrics as their MES, right? And they not only do they use it to automate, downtime analytics, OEE, production analytics, but also start and stop jobs to, schedule their work on the factory floor. But the thing is, right, when you're scheduling that work and you want to know when that work order is going to get out the door, right? Unless you're literally putting it into a shipping box off your CNC machine, which some of us do, right? Um, that doesn't actually tell you when your work order is going to be done in time, right? And that blind spot is most often in those manual operations. And that's really what we're here today to talk about. It's not just understanding when it's going to be done, but it's, an inability to trace what happened once the parts got off the machines themselves and where things went awry. Hey, we finished all those parts off the machine on time, but why didn't we get them out the door on time, right? Were they stuck in an axe station or a deburr or a weld station, or those gaps lead to blind spots. And we know that our customers continue to ask us for just one system, right, that can track all those different processes. And then back to Rutherford.
And I like Tim's comment. Yeah, because we got Tim co-signing on this. Yeah, and sometimes it's several manual operations in order to get it to shipment. That's
Yeah.
100% correct. And so, why machine metrics manual stations? Obviously, it connects with all the things that we've added in before. So seamless ERP integration. We want to be able to connect, those operations that are, a part of either a manual machine like a grinding station or an assembly station like that where you're connecting these pieces together and still be able to count parts and record downtime, and be able to submit with a human in the loop those labor tickets back to the ERP. And so now you can be able to and also schedule that work. And it gives you that unified operator interface that Graham was talking about. So now it's simple, it's easy to use. And one of the other things we've been working on this past year is we've made our labor ticket submission just so much easier. So from where we were at the beginning of the year to where we are now, it's bigger, it's fatter, it's just really just brain dead, for and easy to teach our operators to use that. I onboarded a customer just about 2 weeks ago, trained them in the afternoon, and they were using it the following morning. Even with handling, we didn't even train them on the unattended user flow that we built. So when they running lights out, they can assign work to an unattended user. They just figured it out on their own because we turned it in after we did our training. And so it's easy to use. And so that unified operator experience now can be extended to these manual stations that you have to use. So easy to use and to configure. And there's so much more that we're going to be building on top of that, to enable the voice of the shop floor. So already with the voice of the shop floor, and actually I think I have a slide for this. I'm going to come back to this. But you can ask for things. There's automations that you can build in where the operator can say, hey, I'm low on material. I need someone to come bring me more material. So when they need to refresh their bar stock, they don't have to leave the machine if they need to be there managing it, where they can get and request for other people to do that work. And so it's really important to really represent the voice of the shop floor. And we have some really cool things I'll show at the end that are going to be coming later this year that will be available to both our connected machines, using our operator dashboard interface, as well as the manual stations.
Well, Fred, as for some color commentary, I shared in the chat that my favorite pre-machine metrics customer stat of the year was that our operators used to walk 6 miles a month just to and from labor ticket submission terminals. And then they would just like wait in line there just to get them in. Now we all want to get our steps in, but that's not exactly an efficient model to get our work done.
Well, one of the things that, I actually didn't prepare a slide for this, but I meant to, was, when I talk about the added value that we're putting into the operator interface, again, the customer that we turned on about 2 weeks ago, they have a number of citizen machines, and we can do this for a handful of our connected machines, but we also turned on tool life monitoring. Now, it
Mm.
wasn't anything particularly sexy. It's just being able to take the number of counts that were scheduled in the machine and being able to present it to the user in a very clean, easy way. And that solved problems where they have, because they have to tend to their machines, even though they're Swiss machines, they need to make sure things are working correctly, but they're not looking at every part. I mean, they have this huge volume of parts that they're making, but they notice that, we give them information about which tools are going to be expiring during their shift. And that now becomes an interface where they can go out and prep those tools. And so we saved these operators in the matter of just a couple of weeks, 20 minutes of time for each tool change they need to do. And so that's just one of the things where all these optimizations, all these tiny little optimizations to make it easier, better creature comforts, is really what we're seeking to achieve with our manual stations functionality. Oh, big conversation here. Come on, Graham.
You stay focused. I'll keep on the chat. You stay focused on the product.
All right, cool. And so we're going to get to this. So our manual stations, really we're targeting it for, assembly, manual presses, grinding, welding, wherever there's not enough data coming from the machine itself. And there's a step where it's really, or it's a step where the labor that's actually the value added labor, is coming more from a human than from a machine. That's what a manual station is going to be great for. And so you can be really flexible about how you think about it. So obviously, we already have tools for the connected machines. That's this machining image you see here. But now with connected stations like grinding, we can we can connect a station and you can manage your work and actually include the part counts associated with how you're doing work and record the cycle times, as well as with assembly stations where you're actually doing your assembly work, as you can see these guys sitting at other stations. Also quality checks, we need to do a quality check on each individual part. So there's different ways that you can think about or imagine where manual stations become very useful. And so I'm going to walk you through a demo so I can show you exactly what that looks like. So I'm going to start here with our production schedule. I'm just going to refresh it to make sure you can see everything. So it starts with our production schedule, and you can see with all these manual stations that I have, I can give them any kind of name. So assembly 01, assembly 02, or deburr, any kind of station, whatever name you want to call it, you can put that information together. And it's very easy to create a manual station. Again, since we're not connecting to actual streaming of data, it's very simple. With our production schedule, you can schedule work against a manual station just as you can schedule work with a connected station. It's very simple to click on the schedule work button, identify the work that's available. I think I've actually scheduled all the work that's in this area, but it's just really about dragging and dropping this work around. So if there's work that I need to move to a different station in order to get things done a little bit faster, I can very much do that. And the schedule is going to recalculate when that work is going to be done. So
Rutherford, just really quick here, just so I want to add some color commentary here. The premise of this really is our ERP integration, right, guys? So when work orders are released from the ERP, right, they sync into the machine metric schedule, right? As they are, if you do have those assignments, right, work centers, machining centers, assembly centers, stations that are already predefined for individual work orders or operations, then those operations will automatically slot into our schedule without any manual work required, right? Now, if they're not, right, and some of us have, generalities, right, then they'll be assigned into the queue on the right-hand side of the screen. And then your scheduler can essentially make that scheduling decision based on real-time feedback from the factory floor using what you see on the left-hand side of the screen, which is that we're constantly calculating the capacity that you have on your different operations using either real-time machine data or labor ticket feedback or in what Rutherford's going to show you, part count feedback from your manual processes. So forgive me, Rutherford. Just wanted to give that little side premise.
no, that's exactly right. So I wanted to start here because you can, as you notice here, it's very easy to dispatch work to the machines and be able to track what's happening. And it's going to calculate when the job is going to be done. And the color coding here represents whether the job is going to be on time or if it's at risk of being late. And when things are red, it's going to be late. So if it's clear, it's on time. If it's orange or this color here, it's going to be at risk of being late. So that means it's not late yet, and I could move this job around to optimize when it's going to be done. If the job is color coded as red, that means it's late already. And so you can use these color codings to give you information about when to optimize your schedule. But I'm going to cancel those changes I made. And so now that I have my schedule in place, I'm going to go to one of my machines. So I'm going to start here on the I'm going to go through the grinding machine here. And as you can see here, I already have on this grinding machine, I have PO29 of the work that needs to be done. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in as Alice Wonders here. Sign in right now. And I can see immediately the communication to the operator is direct. I can see what work is scheduled for me to get done. And now when I start this work in production, I can start building on this work. Now, I can do this multiple different ways. Every time I assemble a part and complete a part count cycle, I can just hit this plus button and that moves the cycle forward. And it keeps on tracking how things are being done. If I keep on hitting it and making sure it goes forward, I can manually count my parts in this way. And it will calculate the cycle count over here very easily and keep track of what is not just how long it took for a part to be done, but now this becomes part of your historical information about how this assembly station is operating. And so you can make it very easy for an operator to do the work for a part and then hit a button, and then that will refresh the current cycle time and record the exact amount of time from the start of one part to the start of the next part. And now this information is now going to be available for you in analytics. We're going to build medium cycle times just like we would do with any other kind of connected machine that you may have experienced. Now, another way to do this, if I don't want to use the individual part count, I can go ahead and hit the submit work. And if I'm not counting parts directly using that plus button, I can always just put in the number of parts that I've made at the end. So if I'm done with this particular job, I can just put in the number of jobs that parts I've done, and I can hit submit here. Now, before I do that, I do want to go back to my production schedule. So I'm going to show you what's happening here. So you can see now back in my production schedule, since Alice has started working on this, I now get feedback in this nice production schedule to show that I have work that's going on with this. And she's made it, and I can see the part count trajectory that she has by using that plus button. It keeps track and it feeds that information back into our overall systems. So back in my grinder, if I'm done with this job, I'm going to say I made all 300 parts. I'm going to submit this work, say the job ended now, and now I can start working on the next job that I have. And I can start that job. Again, back in my machine schedule, it's going to keep track of this information as I refresh this. And so you'll always be able to see in real time what's happening on these particular parts. And now I'm going to start working on this next job. And now I can start counting parts for this next job. So, so this whole process of manual stations gives you a way of integrating with your ERP for those assembly or non-connected machines type of work. Gives you the ability to count parts and gives you the ability to track your cycle time for those parts when you're using this plus icon. But using the plus icon is not needed to count parts. When you submit work, you can always submit your final part count at the end of the job. So I'll pause there. And there's a series of questions that came in.
All over the Rutherford. I'm just like firing away. I've got my I don't know if you could just hear me just pounding my
I
key.
heard something going on. I thought it was like a storm coming.
It is a storm of awesome questions with great answers. Essentially, some of the questions that I thought were great ones, I was going to hold for our Q&A, but some of the great ones were really around like the difference between what we're doing and like an APS system. And like sort of like where does the line get drawn between like ERP and MES? And it is a really good question, right? Because it depends is the answer, right? I believe we have a theology that over time the lines are going to are blurred, right? In a lot of ways. And it's less about what ERP is and an MES is and more about the jobs that businesses just need to get done. And there may be different ways to do that depending on how you want to configure your business. But I do want to clarify that in most of our customers, they have an advanced planning system, right? Or the planning, which is really taking into additional constraints like, sales numbers and projections and materials. And that's usually, we believe, the job of an ERP system is to have that information, right? But where we see things really go awry is when that work gets released, right? And that's where things really go to hell in a handbasket, right? And where we see like, essentially like Excel spreadsheets or, like a whiteboard or some, that's where things go to hell, right? So that's where we're really jumping in there. And then one of the other questions, Rutherford, was just around like from current customers that are using ERP driven, can you use this new feature and functionality? And I'll let you answer these questions, obviously. But
yeah, there's a lot of questions coming in.
So yes, one by one, I'm getting them.
Yes, I didn't set up all the information to show you how to reject parts, but please do connect. You can absolutely reject parts in our system. You can either, one of the things you can say is if I'm not using the part count, the plus button, I can also just put in the number of parts. I did not do that many parts. Let's say I did 300 parts, and I can reject parts here as an overall whole to do that here. So that's one way to do it. But we also have that in our interface. If I had the right screens turned on, because I kind of turned off all those other features just to focus on the part counting side of it, but you can definitely do that. If you want to have a big red button, it's a physical button. Our team can walk you through how to get that set up. And so instead of using the virtual big button, you can have a physical big button that you just need to hit, like and then that'll count parts as well. And so we have all these configurations that we've made available for our launch of our manual stations.
Yeah, it's a really great question. Like in many ways, like like Sven, great question, by the way. One of the reasons we put this together was because um, like the time, effort, and resources to censor up a station for some of us that had like a like a lower cost asset or was just like sort of a pain, right? And so we wanted the whole idea was like, could we get a factory essentially up and running on our MES system with no connections themselves, right? And the answer is yes, right? Now if you'd want to keep like actual track of a station, right, using like IoT, that's
Mhm.
no brainer. You can totally do that, right? There's ways to track like a part count, whether it's like a T4 sensor, like you mentioned, Sven. You could even use like a proximity sensor, like literally like when you drop something into like a bucket, right? That could be like the end of a part count, right? There's other ways where literally like you put
Break the beam.
yeah, yeah, an operator could literally like stand on like a sensor, right? When maybe they always walk over and drop it in something over there, and when they step there, right, that's the end of your process. So there's just a ton of ways that we can do that. Um, we're gonna take that last question on because it's the one that gets me the most amped around. Well, now we're doing
Let's
all
do
this.
that when we get to the end
We're
of
gonna
the
get there later,
presentation.
but
So Sven, hang on to that last question. It's coming or something.
yes, is your short
Yes.
answer. We're working on, we're going to show you a little bit about that at the end of this webinar.
Okay. So one of the other things is, of course, with if you've used our system before, you can categorize your downtime. So if I have downtime that for this manual station that I want to have, that's a process, and maybe there's no job, or I could do some inspection in order to do this work, whether those planned or unplanned. I can record that time that is down as downtime, and so that gives you the full capability of doing that. So you can start your jobs, you can track your jobs, you can do part counts and record your downtime, um, and reject parts. So I do actually have that turned on for this interface. So I can reject parts easily in this interface. So I wanted to move on to this because now that you've got the attention of your operators for more than just the connected machines, there's other things that we can add into this. And so I wanted to kind of show you through a couple of demos this one is actually available to us right now. In the world where you have operators that are doing multiple things. So in the case of connected machines, they may have operators that are managing multiple automated machines. In the world of assembly stations, they may be doing different tasks associated with the assembly stations as well. And so the idea is they may be at different stations doing multiple things. So the process that we sort of have and I want to walk you through here, is I just want to walk you through the ability of what does a day look like, and then when I get to the end of my shift, how signing out can be even easier, especially when you're operating managing multiple machines. So I'm going to type in and get in my employee ID here, hit submit in this process. I give a nice little welcome screen, and I'm going to start my job. All right. So I started my job on this one machine, and then as I go through my day, I may be starting job on two other machines that are not this machine. And so as the day goes on, I've completed all my work. I've got my job started on this machine, and now it's time for me to go home for the day. It's the end of my shift. So I'm going to sign out hit the sign out button, and I'm going to sign out of this job. I completed the work, and I'm going to submit that work. What Machine Metrics is going to do now is ask me, am I clocking out for the day? Because now there's a special experience that can happen here. So if I'm clocking out for the day, I'm going to look at all the machines that you signed into and find out all the work that you've signed up for, and I'm going to clock you out of each one of those things. So now the problem that ends up is, when operators are at the end of their day, whether they're doing connected machines, working on a CNC machine, or working on a deburr station, they just want to go home. They've done their work and they want to go home. And so sometimes they don't actually update the ERP with the information that you need for tracking it. So we're just making it a little bit easier for them to close out everything that they have when they clock out for the day and when they're done. And so we're going to show them all the labor tickets that are open that need to be closed out. And then it's really easy to kind of go through and collect the information that you need. So this is a setup that's being done. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this setup to get started on that tomorrow or for the next shift. And then this is another job I started, and I'm going to complete this one. And now I've done all the accounting for the day, and I can just sign out and go home with everything know that's being done. So this is that functionality is available for our connected machines, and now it's also available for manual stations. So very, very, very cool. Um, Now, one of the things that's not yet out the door, but if you come to our next webinar, which we're going to quickly talk about for how Max AI or how AI is going to be used into the system, I want to show you another use case that's coming later on this year. And this is going to be available for connected machines as well as manual stations. And I'm just going to start from the process of signing out for the day. And so I'm going to clock out for the day. And I'm just going to say yes. And typically what happens when I sign out or when a shift, let's say you're part of the first shift and the second shift is coming in, something went wrong during today's shift and I need to tell the next operator, what to do with it. And typically there's a process that many of our customers have, not all of them, but where they have a little black book next to the machine and they record their notes. And so you can record your notes in a piece of paper. And then when the next operator comes in, they look at those notes and read them. Does everybody have that kind of process? Obviously, you can't see everyone raising their hands. So I'll just say, yes, there's a handful of people who have that process. And usually it's written down and it's not digital. So what we are looking to launch later this year is if you hit yes to I'm clocking out for the day, we're going to give you a shift handoff session. We're going to walk you through some of the things that you did today. So give you some value about, how well you did on your shift and, identify the machines you worked on, how many jobs you completed, how many parts you made, what was your reject rate. So just some information about happened. Did you make your rate? Did you make parts as fast as was expected of you to make? But then we're going to have our AI system automatically generate the shift notes of what happened based on looking at the actual data of what happened. Now, we're going to get some of those informations correct, but obviously if there's information that's not going to be in the data, but if something that went wrong or that happened, we're going to give the operator a chance to add a note themselves. And so we're basically automating this process so you can have a unified system of how operators can add their notes, and we're going to make it very easy. And if you, depending on your shop, you can either have them type things up, but also you can use your microphone and it'll just talk into the system of what happened and just kind of tell us everything about what happened. It doesn't have to be broken down into very clear information. Just tell us what happened, and then when you're done, this is when our AI kicks in again, and we transform that into information into clear notes that can be handed off to the next person. And so the next shift actions kind of become more clear, and then you can submit that. So that's cool. So that's how you can capture shift notes. But it becomes even better when the next person signs in for the day. And so in this case, I'm going to sign in as Carlos. And so we're going to have an idea of what machines he's going to manage because he signed into machines before. And there's going to be a way that you can select additional machines. So if you're managing a different set of machines than you did previously, we're going to see that information and can update it. And for all the machines that you have to work on that day, our schedule is going to give you a quick update of these are the jobs you have to get done today. This is what you're working on now. These are the actions that came from the last operator for all the different machines that you're working on to pay attention to. So confirm that maintenance was addressed on the coolant link near pump 2, for example, and just some notable events that happened in the past shift. And so giving the operator a good bird's eye view of things they need to pay attention to. And since it's all generated through our AI system, it's going to be based on the machines that you're working on, which could be different for each operator. And so yes, and each one of these notes are going to be persisted and saved in our, well, that's going to come into our knowledge repository, which is going to be something I'm going to show you next up. So,
You're I can't, you respond to them and doing it at once. You're crazy.
I know, exactly. So the thing that I really wanted to just reinforce here is by bringing on manual stations into your environment, you're getting a space where now you can start and track jobs. You can count parts and identify their cycle times. But you also get access to all these other features and functionality that sort of fill in the gaps of just handling these other little jobs that are happening on your shop floor. And the thing that that I'm really focused on, and my product managers and our engineers are really focused on, is tracking. The way that most people think about tracking work and all that stuff is this is something you're doing in addition to your job. Like your job there as an operator is to make parts and get as many parts out as follows the day. But part of your job is tracking work too. And so what you're going to see with machine metrics is we want to find other ways to engage operators, because the whole point of identifying areas of improvement is it kind of starts with the person who's actually doing the work. And a lot of that time is those are the operators, either for your connected machines or for your manual stations. And so our focus is to make this interface as functional as possible to provide insights to communicate things. And that's where I want to talk about Max AI. And so I'm going to go back to my presentation here. I'm going to skip over this slide, but you kind of get an idea. The whole point of this slide is now that we've always had connected machines, and we're adding in manual stations that really fill out that gap about how you can track work. But with Max AI, I'm going to go back to my presentation mode. So this is coming online. It's already in preview mode for our continuous improvement agent. But with Max AI, it's a chat interface at its most basic level inside of our platform. And we're going to be engaging and bringing on different digital employees, so to speak, or digital agents that help you get work done. So the first thing that we're launching this year is a continuous improvement agent. So since we have access to when we connect your ERP to the machine metrics platform, we have access to the plan of what is expected to happen. When we are connected to all of your machines and also your stations, now we have actions of what's happening on the shop floor in real time. And those two things together gives you a much better surface area for understanding where your efficiencies lie. And so by asking our Max AI agent, you can ask questions about, give me a continuous improvement plan based on the findings from last week's production activity. And it'll come up and it'll research everything that happened, start to identify where you had successes and where you had areas of improvement, and articulate a full plan of how you can do that. And so for those of you who have access to Max AI, you can try that out today. By the time we launch it in the next month, it's going to be even 10 times better. And it's going to give you this information where the insights about where the improvements are in your application, or in your platform, or in your production and shop floor, can be surfaced just by asking questions.
Now, Rutherford, and for in the chat, just for fun, because I know a lot of people playing with it. What are your favorite prompts that you've used so far for Max? Now, I'll give you mine. So, and this is from a customer, so I can't steal it, but this is from them. But my favorite was they obviously are using machine metrics across all their different processes, and they have a schedule, and they're scheduling all their work, and they're asking Max, every morning, which operators run which operations the best, and where should I assign everybody today, right? To give us the best output for our scheduled work. And my jaw dropped. I was like, that's so freaking cool. But please, for those of you in the chat that have had a chance to play, feel free to share your favorite Max prompts. But Rutherford, what's your favorite prompt that you've used so far?
Well, the one I've been working on, because I want to automate this, that's actually one of the features we're looking to launch either in the next month or shortly after the big launch, is I want to be able to find out what were the issues with my shift, not my shift, I'm sorry, what was the issue with my daily production that happened yesterday? So because we have customers who have daily production meetings, and they spend their time to get the information about what happened before that meeting by walking around. And that's great. It's always good to walk around and talk to your operators. I mean, first of all, go continue doing that. They know a lot. But some of that information is already in our system, and we know what happened yesterday. And so I always like to ask, what happened in yesterday's production with all three shifts, or however many shifts I had, and tell me what I need to do about it today. And so I like that prompt. And there's going to be some cool stuff coming with that, where you can do that with, I'll say that for the Max AI webinar next week. But I'm focusing on that because we're building some really cool features associated with that information.
That does remind me, before you move on, because I know there's a lot to talk about here, and it is really exciting. if you are, I know we got a lot of users, non-users here. I'm going to put two things in the chat here. One is if you are interested in adding manual stations to your current account, or if you're not a Machine Metrics user and you want to learn more about this, we've already booked a ton of demos, but I put a demo link there in the chat. Feel free to book a time. For current users, it'll route you directly to your current account manager, so you can set up time with them, which is awesome. Gotta love automation. But I would highly, um, I would say that you recommend that you join for the live launch of Max AI. This is a webinar up and coming, where we're going to show off some absolutely crazy, amazing stuff using AI. Really pragmatic, usable AI tools, and that launch is next month. So there's two different links there where you can either book times to learn about manual stations with a direct rep for a demo, or sign up for the Max AI webinar. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Robert.
No problem. And also, if you want access to the preview, send the link to your Machine Metrics representative, your solution delivery agent, or to our support, and they'll route it to. We can turn it on for you. It's not fully functional yet, but you can start playing around, and it's really cool even in its current state. The really cool part of the next Max AI launch that's coming out is what we call the Knowledge Hub. And so someone asked a question about, if we create a shift report, is that information going to be available for you to access it later? So yes, I think was that Sven who asked that question? Who asked that question?
Which, forgive me, I missed the question, Rutherford.
Yeah, someone asked a question about if we
Yeah,
create a shift.
instructions.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
That
work
was, that was
instructions. That's right.
Sven. That was
All right,
Sven.
so let me talk about Knowledge Hub really quickly. So, well, Max AI is sort of the brains that's going to look at all of your data and give you in our best guess about what you should do. And it's using information from your ERP, information from what actually happened on the shop floor. But there's still a gap of information that we need. It's your tribal knowledge. It's like things that are like, this is how we do things. And so the Knowledge Hub is a way to teach Max more about who you are and how you do things. And so we're calling it the brain behind the agents. And that really is looking at your SOPs, maybe your manuals. We have a couple different processes where we want to be able to automatically collect tribal knowledge about how things are done and actually shift handovers. The secret sauce there is actually, as we collect information about what happened during a shift handover, we're going to be cherry picking pieces of information that are going to go into our Knowledge Hub. And so then when you start a job that, let's say, shift says, I have had a problem running this particular job, and when you get to this part, the program always shears the part and creating some rejects or some NCRs, non-conforming parts. That could be something that's stored in our tribal knowledge, and then when you start that job again, in that shift start page that I showed you, we can bring up that information from our tribal knowledge database about how to run these particular parts. And so it becomes really functional about how we integrate this into the operator experience and how this information gets surfaced. This is also an area where you can store work instructions. And then when we start a job, we had a page where we say, I want to either go to setup or production. That's an area where work instructions can be displayed, or in the future, probably near the end of this year or early Q1, we'll be able to retrieve these documents as part of the process of doing your work. Display your diagrams associated with those particular jobs that you're running. And so it provides that additional context about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and information that we can collect over time about how to make your production smarter, and to give that information to the people who need it at the time they need it. And the really important use case that a customer who we've been building this with, they had a problem just a couple of weeks ago where a feature that they would have that was expressed in a shift handover, it was written in a notebook. They actually found it from 3 months earlier. The third shift, that was a skeleton crew, was trying to run that same job, had the exact same problem, but didn't know how to fix it. And so they lost about 6 hours of productivity because that person didn't know what to do, even though it was documented already and it was called out at least a couple of times before. And so this is an area where when we start the job, Knowledge Hub can actually capture this information and then provide it and display that information to an operator when they need that information, even if it's at 2 a.m. in the morning and no other experts are around. So that's the promise of where Knowledge Hub can go. Graham, you want to add something to this?
So many things.
So many things.
I'm so excited about this. So like the thing is like the Knowledge Hub is also Rutherford. What Rutherford I think did brilliantly was explain how you can essentially like data is the like the gasoline for AI, right? So like with Knowledge Hub, right, we can centralize more data, not just machine data, ERP data, but now we're talking about like knowledge, right? Unified SOPs, processes, manuals, tribal knowledge, and all that can be used to like answer questions, right? But I don't know how many users are here that have asked me for this for literally forever, right? But it's like, hey, like, an operator's, about to start a job, right? They need help on an alarm, right? There are documents, images, PDFs that people need at the end in the moment's notice, right? And they need them to be delivered to them, right? And so within the Knowledge Hub, we're also going to be providing document management. So the ability to essentially deliver these knowledge, these informations to the right people at the right time. And that just adds so much value to the life of an operator, right?
Yeah,
One of the reasons why we built there was this thought that was going around, I think, in the industry for a long time that you didn't want any operators to no operator input. And I think that concept was just completely
crazy.
wrong. It's like it's the opposite. It's you just don't want to waste operators' time with that stuff, right? And so by what Machine Metrics is really doing is we are untribalizing knowledge and getting the right information to the right people at the right time. So when it's time to start a work order, you can see the SKU and know exactly what it is that you're building. You can receive the shift notes from the shift before to know exactly what happened, and so you can avoid it. You can get answers to say, what does this alarm mean, right on this machine? A couple of us had a pet project inside, and we've been capturing. I think we have like 1,000+ machine manuals, and we've been able to feed that into AI that now we can match alarms on the machines of what's happening and provide an instruction to tell you what's going on so you can get that alarm resolved. My point is that all this knowledge that exists in the brain of people or in the manual of a machine or in a piece of paper or something that was written on a note can now all be centralized, right, into a brain where we can then utilize that to augment or automate knowledge, right, and process. And that's, for those of you that, you've heard us use the word MES today a couple times, right? Manufacturing execution is is slowed by our ability to not know exactly what is happening and when, right? And what we can do, right? It's the actions that drive execution. Literally, the word execution is in the name MES, right? And AI allows us to augment or automate that execution. And knowledge, in many ways, I believe, is as valuable as the machine or ERP data. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's what's really exciting to me about this feature.
Yeah, and you can probably give a longer answer to Bob about he's using Shopfloor Mobile. So you're an Infor visual customer, is that right, Bob? At least that's your ERP. So we can follow up with, yeah, exactly. So we can follow up with you about how to get that set up to track it in the way that makes sense for you. What we do recommend, because we do want to track what each operator is doing, we do say, include a unique ID for each person that's doing the work. But there's different ways we can skin that cat. So there's lots of different ways we can tackle that. One of the things I did want to talk about, in addition to the Knowledge Hub, is Machine Metrics is also building a repository of shared knowledge. And that shared knowledge is going to be something that is our opinionated version, since we've been doing this for a number of years, about how to operate with real-time data. Oftentimes, having this real-time feedback is new for customers, and so we're building some best practices into our shared knowledge repository about how to deal with certain things. And so that's another aspect about this. So, so that's coming up on November 12th. And I think I know I didn't leave a lot of room for QA. But that
Well,
was
we did answer a few hundred during the chat today, so I feel like we got some really good ones. We've got about 3 minutes. I know to the gentleman who posted, let's get to the point here. I hope we got to the point for you, and that you were able to derive some value from the webinar. I certainly enjoyed it, but again, we're here for you guys. I really appreciate everybody joining us today. If you do have any questions for us, right, we're here to address them. You can always reach out to us, whether it's to your account manager, whether you want to book a demo through the website, email info@machinemetrics.com. You can always send a message to Rutherford and I on LinkedIn. We're cross channel communicators. Don't forget to sign up for our next webinar. I put the links in the chat. Hopefully you guys found this to be a valuable session. Thank you everybody for your time, and thank you Rutherford for just being awesome.
And thank you, Graham. Great banter. Loved it.
Lovely banter.
And most importantly, thank you to the people who joined us. Amazing set of questions, and we look forward to sharing more with you as we roll out some new features. But it's been a great time, and you guys have a great afternoon. Take care.